Hi guys, and welcome to the first video in a series all about motility and the migrating motor complex. Things that you didn't know you would ever have to care about. Am I right? Let's talk about it anyway, because this is a big topic in the world of IBS and the world of SIBO. And I want to start out with just a clear, boring definitions video. So most people in the world of SIBO are intimately familiar with the migrating motor complex, MMC. And what that is a particular type of motility. So in order to really get to know the MMC, we actually need to talk about motility more broadly first, and then we can zoom in and hyperfocus on the MMC, because I do think both are important for SIBO and IBS, but in my opinion, the MMC is a little bit more important than other types of motility. So let's back up a step and talk about what on earth is motility and why should you care? Motility, I would say, is the rhythmical contraction of muscles, smooth muscles in your intestinal tract, in this case, that are rhythmically contracting to move the contents of your food tube, aka your digestive tract, in one direction at all times. You want your food and bacteria and fibers and undigested whatevers, you want that to be moving from mouth to anus, down and out at any given point. And if things get stuck along the way, or if heaven forbid they start to go backward, that's where you get into unfavorable SIBO territory and also other conditions. You can have motility problems in a variety of different ways, and each organ within the digestive system along that tube, each organ has its own type of motility, and then there's types that are going to be different. There's types that are different structurally, depending on the location, and some that are different functionality wise. So you have motility in the esophagus and associated diseases thereof. You have motility in the stomach, motility in the small intestines, and finally motility in the colon. For SIBO purposes, we tend to hyperfocus on motility in the small intestine and stomach, whether you realize it or not. The MMC is really going to be isolated to the stomach and the small intestine. So we established motility is the movement of contents of your digestive system down and out or towards the exit. Now let's talk a little bit about MMC, because there's different types. You can have motility that is trying to get a large chunk, or a bolus as they would call it in the medical world, trying to move a large bolus of food further along the tract so it can be digested, right? So the food will be swallowed and the esophagus needs to contract to move that food down into the stomach. Then the stomach needs to have its own type of squishing and crunching and digestive juice mixing process. And then the stomach needs to contract to get the food out of the stomach. And then it gets into the small intestine, etc. That all is going to happen in a sequence from organ to organ to organ to organ in these broad strokes as the food is getting broken down and digested along the way. There is another type of motility called the migrating motor complex that is largely going to be in the stomach and the small intestine, and that actually happens in a completely fasted state. So this is where we start to get into the topic of facilitating those contractions, and why the old garbage that we were fed for the last, 20 plus years, saying you should eat 6 or 7 small meals a day instead of 3 square meals, was complete and utter rubbish. Rather, you need periods of fasting, at least a few hours worth of fasting, if you're ever going to stand a chance of getting this MMC activation. And the reason why it's particularly important is it's not so much in the game of clearing large chunks of food from your intestines, but the MMC is going to be like cleaning up shop. Think of it as little teeny tiny helper people that are sweeping with their little, brooms and whatnot. They're sweeping all the stuff out of the small intestine. So everything that got left behind after the last bolus of food went through, any stray bacteria, any stray food or fibers or whatever, needs to be kind of shooed. They need to be shooed out of the small intestine. You can picture like the little teeny worker people that I imagine saying literally shoo. So that is the first thing I wanted to talk about is the definitions of motility as a whole, and then we're going to zoom in on MMC, or a type of motility. Now, in future videos, we can talk in more depth and understand more about the vagus nerve, the anatomy, the neurochemistry, some of the things that you need to do to facilitate proper motility. Because here's one of the things about motility I would like to talk about in this first video. It is inherently a nervous system function. So if your nervous system is not doing so hot, or is off kilter, or needs some, shall we say, rehabbing, then that is going to potentially affect the MMC. So start thinking about what makes neurons happy, what do neurons need to function and do their job properly, and where do these neurons hang out? We're looking at gut neurons, but I think it also largely ties back to the brain. And then that will open a conversation in future videos to talk about the vagus nerve and rehabbing those gut nerves directly, and how brain and neurological stuff really ties into this beautifully. And then eventually we're going to geek out on some of the things that we need for proper MMC activation, like, spoiler alert, a healthy colon microbiome, thyroid hormone, proper blood sugar control, inflammation under control, and all of the fun stuff that goes along with that. So until next video, we will talk more about motility and MMC. I'm so excited to have this new series launched, and it ties beautifully into SIBO mistake number 22 that I just posted yesterday about taking prokinetics. So let's talk about motility, guys. That's a pretty hot topic in the world of SIBO.